We have Q&As starting to come in, and so a couple of those have been answered, and we'll continue to ask folks to share those, and our staff are continuing to answer them as the evening goes on. We have a couple of questions that are probably good for you to answer, Dan. And so I think that we will move into the public comment portion of the meeting while you look at those, and then we'll come back to you after we take a comment or two. So I have my colleague on the line here too, Luis, and he's going to begin unmuting folks in the order that they signed up in their registrations. And so the first commenter that we had signed up was Dwayne Morphew. Luis, do we have him on? And if so, can you unmute him? And I'll apologize too. We'll probably have a little bit of a delay in between each of these speakers as we run the technology to mute and unmute.
Yes, I'm here. This is Dwayne Morphew, and I'm on the committee, and so I'll just pass. I have another opportunity to ask questions, or another avenue to ask questions, so I'll yield my time.
Thanks, Dwayne. The next person that we have on the line is Steve.
Yes, thanks for giving me the opportunity just to ask a question or just kind of speak my mind. Can you hear me okay?
We're getting a little bit of feedback from you.
Is this better?
Yep, try that.
All right, my name is Stephen Pope. I live in St. Paul, Minnesota, but I'll spend a lot of time in the Arrowhead hiking with my dog, and my family also owns some land in the Brainerd area. And one thing I'd request is that the Minnesota DNR please continue to emphasize non-lethal deterrence for preventing livestock. It's my understanding that there is actually an article from the Minnesota DNR, the Wolf Livestock Conservation Prevention Grants, and on pages 27 and 28 of that report, it speaks about some of the good progress that's been made with farmers and livestock ranchers who implement non-lethal deterrence. And I understand that people's livelihoods are at stake, and that it can be hard to lose livestock. But I hope that we can also try to highlight these options for ranchers and farmers, and that the DNR will continue to kind of promote these non-lethal deterrents. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for that comment. We'll take one more, and then I'll turn it back to Dan and see how he's doing on digesting some of the Q&A. So our next speaker is Rebecca Prochaska. Luis, is she on?
I'm here.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me? No feedback?
Sound good.
Awesome. So thanks for the opportunity to participate. So I have a little bit of a different viewpoint on, I say, business owners, livestock owners, and I think we have to look at or consider a non-lethal plan. And I think this is an opportunity for the DNR to look at, if we look at the North American hunting model, it's an opportunity for us to evolve, and this may be an opportunity for the Minnesota DNR to kind of lead with that. And that's, looking at different opportunities of how others can participate, maybe that resident bucket like me, how I can sponsor wolves in other ways other than killing. So I'd like to see some focus or maybe some alternatives around that. But my final question that I'd like answered is, so Dan, you did a really good job of comparing kind of the wolf population relative to incidents or complaints. But I'd like to know, if we look at overall, what percentage of livestock in Minnesota are actually killed by wolves? Like, what are the actual numbers? Because when I dug into this data in 2015, it was very low. So I understand, I'm not disputing that there's a problem there, but I'm very concerned around the killing, especially if it's in very concentrated areas, that we're not leading with an alternative plan, because I think the business owner and the DNR have to answer the burden of proof of why do we need to kill the wolves? That's, those are my two questions, is the burden of proof of why, and then what percentage of livestock in Minnesota are actually killed by wolves? What's that percentage number comparative to the total millions of amount and then the actual depredation? Thank you.
Thanks for that comment.
Yep.
So Dan, I'll reiterate that question and then we can move to the Q&A. And so it was, what percentage of livestock are killed by wolves, and then the rationale for lethal. Do you want to respond to those at all?
Yeah, I don't have specific numbers of cattle by county or wolf range available in front of me, but Rebecca's right. It's a relatively low percentage based on overall, number of livestock present. But I think if you're the individual producer, it can be a pretty significant impact. So even though it may not impact the industry or agriculture as a whole, it can be a significant impact if you lose one or more calves in a year, or a number of livestock. It could be the difference that makes their season successful or not. As far as controlling wolves, or deter, I think it was, what are the reasons, or why is killing wolves the answer? And I think there's been an expectation that is the primary response where there are verified conflicts. It is a combination of both, trying to mitigate damage and prevent further losses, and it's more reactive than what it may be if there were, in cases where we can avoid it in the first place. And I think many producers do take action, as we've seen with the recent, or I should say, in addition to the livestock conflict grants that were available, there was a lot of interest in doing that, and people do try to reduce damage if they can, but often the answer in controlling wolves is after there's already verified damage.
Thanks, Dan. So before we go to more public comment, we had lobbed some questions at you on the back end of the system. Are there any that you'd like to summarize and provide a verbal answer to?
Yeah, am I looking at the prioritized ones or just the Q&A that are my Q&A?
Yeah, the prioritized ones. And if you want some more time, I can go to more public comment first.
I'll just walk through them. So the question was asked, why are wolves killed in response for pets dying? Shouldn't the owner have responsibility for the safety of their pets? I think that everybody should take responsibility and try to avoid that, but it in some cases they don't have, they happen in the backyard or are unpredictable and aren't always able to prevent it. If it can prevent further damage to, or if it's an area where there are more pets, or it's a more residential area, sometimes the wolves are controlled. If it's more remote and not likely to have another, there isn't another pet that they're trying to avoid, that animal being killed, they may not trap the wolves. So some of this information, as I mentioned, and I hope it was clear, that has happened currently while wolves are listed as threatened. What we're exploring here is how or what we might modify or update in a plan when they come off the Endangered Species Act related to conflict management. So another question, the DNR admitted that they dropped the population by 25% in the first year. Hunting was never part of management. It was extirpation of wolves. The population is stable. Why is a hunt even on the table? I don't agree that the hunt dropped the population by 25%. I think there's evidence that it was already had declined. You're basing a population estimate from 2012 or 2008 prior to a season that occurred in 2012. So it wasn't immediately preceding the year of the hunting season. And, I think I answered this, that our approach to establishing the season wasn't intended to have a long-term conflict or impact on wolves. It was to allow a hunting and trapping season within what the population could sustain.
Thanks, Dan. So let me ask you one more in the Q&A, and then we'll go to public comment. So a question about our population estimate methods being based on extrapolation and trends and not numbers. And so can you reiterate that if you'd like to?
Well, I'd defer that one to John Erb if we can. He's the lead on that project, and I think it'd be a good opportunity for him to respond to one of those.
Great. Let me see if John wants to reply in writing while we go to our next public commenter. So we have Joy next on the list. Luis, if you see. Joy, are you there? I think you're coming in just a little bit. Maybe we'll try coming back. Oh, yep.
And now you think, am I good?
Yep, try to go ahead, Joy.
So I'm coming from the end of the scale. You are in it. Not and our people in our area level and our horses and dogs. And I guess our concern in our area is the overpopulation and how we'd like to have that controlled as population. Our population is plummeting downward.
Thanks for that comment. So we'll go next to Michael. Luis, is Michael on the call?
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, were you trying to reach me? I don't have a specific question.
Okay.
Thanks, though.
Yeah, no worries. Then we'll go to Christy next. Luis, does it look like we have Christy on? Okay, we'll double check. Maybe it's a call-in number and we have to match the name to a call-in number. How about Ryan?
You guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I actually typed in kind of a question. I ran out of room, so it wasn't really a question, it was a statement. But I actually come from a cattle family farm in our family cattle farm in Northwest Minnesota. And we have not had a lot, I'll admit, we have not had a lot of wolf issues in the past. But we have noticed the last couple of years, obviously, I'm a deer hunter too, love the outdoors, have seen a lot more wolves on trail cameras. It's been, it used to be just one or two here and there. Now pack sizes seem to be larger, where you see it's not abnormal to get a picture of 4 or 5 wolves in a pack. So family groups, I would assume. You guys could tell me more. Obviously, you're the experts, but this past year was the first year my dad really had trouble with cattle wolf conflict. As you know, we had a challenging spring with calving. We had winter storms. We had things like that. But it was pretty clear evidence we had some wolf issues. We lost 5 calves in the matter of, like, I would say 7 days. And with farming and everything, checking cows every day, sometimes gets challenging to be there all the time, right? When you're not living right with your cattle, they're a couple miles away in my dad's instance. So before we really got on it that it was a problem, unfortunately the damage was already done. It happens so fast when calves are dropping like that. So what we could find is we lost 5 for sure. So we called the DNR immediately. They came out. They did a great job. They spent a lot of time with us and tried to identify exactly what could happen. My problem with, and it's maybe not even a Minnesota DNR issue, it's a federal issue, is you have to have evidence that it was a wolf kill. And if your evidence gets old, or a fresh baby calf born only weighs 50, 60 pounds, well, 3 or 4 wolves are going to carry that calf off. So now all of a sudden you have pieces of evidence. You don't have a whole calf with tons of evidence. And if there isn't snow, which there likely isn't during calving season, sometimes finding tracks or scat or things like that's really challenging. So I guess when we're looking at a wolf management plan, if we're not going to be able to, I guess what I would say, use science and regulate them, the population, like I think we should be able to do, how are we going to use non-lethal methods or just use trapping methods when the damage can happen so fast for cattle producers in such a short window of time? So probably lots of questions in my statement there, or questions back at you, but just thoughts going forward. How can we come up with a new plan for cattle producers? Like in my dad's instance, he only got compensated for 1 out of that 5 calves. And to one of the ladies that was talking about data that we're using about how many calves are killed by wolves, well, you have to prove that calf got killed by a wolf. In my dad's instance, well, there are 4 that are unaccounted for, that he gets 0 compensation from the federal government. And all the DNR guys agreed likely those other 4 were killed by wolves, but we could not prove that they were killed by wolves. That's my problem with our overall strategy for wolf and cattle conflict. So that's where I'm at right there from a cattle producer, from the son of a cattle producer anyways. So
great, thanks for that. Dan, anything there you want to address?
Yeah, the claims process is defined in state law and rule that, that there's minimum requirements, whether it's a a carcass, there needs to be a carcass present and evidence to support that wolf predation occurred. So, at a minimum, there needs to be a carcass and then additional information that supports it was wolves and that it was killed and not just fed on. And those are the criteria that are in place. So establishing other criteria, I think, would be a process outside the scope of updating this plan.
Great. Thanks, Dan. We'll go to another public commenter. Luis, is Annie on?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thanks.
Well, hi. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Dan, Dave, and Kelly. You guys are great. And everybody else we're not seeing on the call. I always feel like I've really made it over a hurdle when I can get technology to work. So it did work tonight. So thank you, guys. I do have some personal information I'd like to impart, and that is I've been up in the Boundary Waters and heard the wolves howl overnight, and it's been one of the most awesome things. Oh, I'm just crying. That I've ever heard in my life. So I've got some prepared statements. I'll go through them pretty quickly here. Again, my name is Annie, and I'm living in Ramsey County. I think it's critically important that our updated wolf management plan does not include any provisions for hunting or trapping seasons. The last time Minnesota wolves lost federal protection, over 400 wolves were killed just in the first season. I think we already talked about that. And many of them were pups. So studies show that native carnivores like wolves regulate their own populations just fine through available prey and habitat. Plus, killing a single wolf can put the whole pack at risk by disrupting the social structure they rely on. I urge you not to include wolf hunting and trapping in the updated management plan. Thanks so much, you guys. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Great. Thanks for the comments. We'll keep going down the public comments before revisiting the Q&A. We have Wayne next. Luis, do we see Wayne on? Okay. What about Jane? I believe Jane's on, so you should be unmuted here shortly. Okay. It looks like the technology is not working for that comment. And so that is the end of the list of folks that pre-registered for a speaking spot. We do have a couple of people who have raised their digital hand. So you should see that option on the right-hand side of your screen. And so if you open up your participants tab, there's a tiny little hand at the bottom of your participants tab. And so we can start calling on people there in a moment. Dan, we could look at a couple more of these Q&As, anything you have on the top of your mind, otherwise I can start asking you some of them.
I was trying to get through some of them, but if it's easier to just ask, and I can respond to them verbally too.
Yeah, quite a few of them are about control. So if you feel you've answered these already, we can say that they've been answered verbally. So question about a report of a wolf killed in 2013 for paw tracks, with no conflict having happened for a number of years before that. And so asking for some explanation of how that permission was given.
I don't know. I'd have to know the circumstances of, the incident, and maybe there'd be additional information from the report that would indicate why that occurred.
Okay. Great. Yep. Again, feel free to follow up with Dan individually if anything doesn't get answered. Let me start calling on a couple of folks who've raised their hands throughout the meeting. So let's go to Francis. Luis, do you see Francis there that you could unmute?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
We can, thanks.
Thank you. You answered a lot of my questions about public education in the presentation, but I want to be clear that I would encourage non-lethal means of control, and I'm completely against hunting. I think as I'm a social anthropologist background, humans that want to hunt wolves get kind of frenzied, just like wolves do when they kill, and I'm just against that. I think there are other means of wolf control, and I just want to make that clear. I agree with the other comments about non-lethal means of control is preferred. And I do have a question for you. I'm sure you mean non-lethal trapping when you talk about wolf control, but under the hunting, it had trapping in there. What kind of trapping are you referring to? I don't know what I mean. My mind goes to some kind of dangerous, inhumane way of hurting animals that any animal or human could get in a trap and get endangered. So I don't know what is meant by that.
Thanks for that comment. Dan, do you have something for that question that you would like to respond with?
Yeah, the types of traps that are used for trapping wolves in a season would be foothold traps. Snares are also allowed.
Thanks, Dan. So we have another hand raised. Maureen. Luis, could you? Maureen?
Oh, yes, on the flattery color, I asked this in print. I've been to several presentations about wolves and non-lethal methods, and it's pretty much been proven that red is not seen as a color. It's just gray to dogs and wolves. And so we actually at Howling for Wolves purchased yellow flattery and donated it to the USDA Wildlife Services to employ. And they were having very good luck, but out west they're using other colors. So I would just encourage the DNR to change colors. There are manufacturers that don't use red. I was the one who asked about the 2013 question. I can tell you that the person basically said he didn't want any trouble and he was given permission to trap out the wolf. So this was in Zone B. Nothing had happened since 2001 anywhere near that farm. It was written in the conservation officer report. The follow-up was they trapped and killed the wolf. They had a private trapper and they just did it. And so I think what people need to understand is that if you have legal killing, you will have illegal killing, number one, with hunting, if you have a hunting season. And we had at least 700 wolves killed the first year in 2012, at least. So I just would encourage this plan to not include a recreational wolf hunt. I agree with the anthropologist who just spoke. And in particular for the wolf has a sordid past in our country and was extirpated purposely. And people believe somehow that we can have a managed hunt on a wolf, which is a social animal. So my biggest comment is that keeping the packs intact is probably the best way to keep conflicts down with farmers, but we have to help farmers understand that once you start randomly killing wolves, you're driving them to have more conflicts. Now, I know I just said a lot, and but I think if you have a recreational wolf hunt, there will be so many problems for so many people and farmers, and it's an unnecessary way to, quote, manage the wolf population and high risk.
Great, thanks for the comment. Dan, anything you want to respond to there?
No, I don't have a response.
Okay. Thanks. So I'll keep looking for hands that are raised, and we have one more, J, just the letter J. Luis, do you see that one?
Hi. I'm not opposed to hunting, as long as the DNR has a plan that is well thought out, and you're doing that, and you're seeking public input. I can tell you that we live on a cattle farm, and we lost numerous calves to wolves. It's cut into our bottom line. It was awful. And we were like the gentleman from Northwest Minnesota, didn't get a lot of assistance from the DNR or the feds because of the rules, and that's fine. So we looked for other alternatives, and we found one, and it was really effective. And we still have wolves. We see them, but they cut a very wide berth around our cattle herd. We haven't lost a calf since. Do I think that recreational hunting of anything is okay? No, I do not. That, trophy hunting, in my view, is wrong. It's wasteful. But if the DNR can come up with a plan that is well thought out, manages all of our resources well, I'm not opposed. And thank you very much for doing this for all of us. It's really appreciated. Thank you.
Great, thanks for the comments. So Dan, that's all the hands that we have up right now. I know we have a couple of Q&As still out to staff. So if there's anything you're seeing that you'd like to address, we could do that. Or if you want, we can ask our staff to unmute if they have anything that they'd rather address verbally. Any preferences on your end, Dan?
I responded to Q&As in that were directed to me. I don't think there's any pending on my end, but if there's some that I can help address somewhere else that I'm not seeing, let me know. Great.
Okay, well, we have plenty of time, which is great. I'm glad we got through the people who signed up to speak. As we said, we're all learning new technologies here. But we have a number of resources on the line with us, our colleagues from the DNR. And so I'll ask if any of them have questions in their queue. And if they want to unmute and turn on their video, you can hear from others of us as well. So any of our panelists, do you have anything that you'd like to address to the meeting participants? Okay, great. Well, we'll keep answering the questions that are in our queue as we wrap up. And if we have anybody else who wants to get a word in, feel free to raise your digital hand. But that brings us to the end of our presentation. And And I'll let Dan say some closing words while we finish up with the Q&As. And just again, remind folks to go to the DNR's webpage. It's easily Googled on the Wolf Plan update, and weigh in via the public input questionnaire too. And tell your friends and family and colleagues as well that we'd love to hear from them through that method as well. Dan, do you have other closing words for us?
No, I just want to thank everybody for participating. You know, it's a new experience for us meeting this way, and we're trying to find ways to engage with the public and have an effective process. It may not be the same as it would be in person, where we may have more side conversations and maybe be able to get more detail in responding to questions. So please feel free to follow up and reach out and give me a call directly. I'd be happy to discuss anything that we presented, or if you have questions about things that come up, to reach out and get in touch.
Sorry, Dan, we actually do have somebody who raised their hand a second time, and it's a little hard to tell with the technology. So we'll unmute Francis for potentially a last comment. We'll see if others.
I did. That was an accident. Sorry, but I see somebody did ask that seemed like it was directed at me. I live in Beltrami County, and yes, I do hear wolves at night on occasion. And I've had a lot of experience with coyotes and wolves and lost animals to coyotes. So he sounded like he was assuming I was a city dweller. I'm not. So I just wanted to make that clear that I do live with nature all around me. So when I said I was against hunting it, there were many reasons for it, and other people covered those reasons as well. So thank you.
Thanks for the comment. And we have at least one more coming in, which is totally fine. We'd like to stay here and hear from people. So even though I awkwardly fake close the meeting, we'll keep going. Mark, Luis, can you unmute Mark? All right, Mark, go ahead. Mark, it looks like you're trying to speak, so maybe try one more time and we'll see if it comes through. All right, sorry, Mark, we're not quite hearing you, so get in touch another way if you can. So I think that is everybody. Oh, we have more hands. Brian.
Thanks for doing this, everybody. My question would be, during the 2011, 12, 13 hunting seasons, what were the ways of confirming the kills or the trapping of the animals?
So Brian, if I'm getting you right, we had a requirement that everybody that registered a wolf that they killed either through hunting or trapping submitted that through a registration system that we have by phone and online, and it updated in real time. And then they also had to bring those animals to a registration station so we could collect additional information on the wolves. And we physically, did that. So we did observe every wolf that was taken during this season.
Great. Thanks, Dan. All right, I'm looking just one more time at any hands that are up. We can try Mark one more time. We want to try unmuting and seeing if it works this time. Mark, if you're there, feel free to go ahead. All right, still nothing. Sorry about that. We all have those moments with technology these days. So thanks again, all. And we look forward to continuing to hear from you and appreciate your time tonight.